Awesome. Well, welcome to today's Lunch and Learn for leaders and those who want to be. I'm excited to have everybody here today. Today, we're going to talk about navigating feedback loops. It's the art of giving and receiving criticism as leaders. Here's the thing. If we're giving it, it's feedback. If we're receiving it, it's criticism. That tends to be how people think about it, right? And so today I want to talk about this because feedback is the backbone of company growth, particularly for people in leadership roles. How leaders offer, how they receive feedback, it significantly influences team dynamics, organizational culture, and ultimately the performance of the team members. So let's talk about the importance of feedback in leadership. Feedback is a catalyst for improvement. It enables leaders to identify blind spots, capitalize on strengths, and refine their leadership approach. Effective feedback fosters a culture of transparency, trust, and continuous learning within teams. It also perpetuates accountability, which Patrick Lencioni says is one of the key components of a functional team within an organization. If there is feedback and if there is a feedback system in an organization, it also fosters continuous learning within teams, which propels collective progress and innovation. When we have feedback, when we're having these conversations, all of a sudden it triggers people. They start thinking things. Now, if you're talking with me, a lot of times it will trigger a song or a movie quote, but then it will trigger an idea and we'll be able to start talking about what are some different ways that we can be doing things. The great thing about feedback is it opens up the conversation to not my way, not your way, but what is the best way. Now, constructive criticism, this promotes a self-awareness and emotional intelligence, which we have talked about at length as being a key attribute of successful leaders. What do you think might be some of the challenges in giving and receiving feedback?
Hi, my name's Kathy Godinez. A really important way to do it is to make it not personal. It's a business thing, so it can't be personal. It can't be a personal attack.
Exactly. That's really good.
To
Yeah.
add on to what Kathy just said, when you're receiving it, don't take it as a personal attack because, like Kathy said, it is business and all we're trying to do is improve as a team. So that works on both sides. It's perfect.
Yeah, really good. Absolutely. Offering and receiving.
I was going to say you could go one step further and say it's also about the tone and how you say something, and the implication, could be different based on the tone that you use.
For sure. Should feedback ever be given through email or text?
I don't think so.
Unless they're not there, unless you can't do face to face, but face to face is, I think, better. So if you can do that.
Yeah, maybe if you have somebody who's working at a remote office in a different part of the country. And then also, one way I like to work with people is their preferred communication. Some people, they are adamant they want that phone call. Some people always want communication or correspondence through email. So I would look for which way they prefer to receive feedback. Do they want it in person? Maybe they're not that kind of person. So if their communication style and preference is email, then I would certainly go ahead and do it through email, just because they should be more comfortable accepting it that way.
Good. A lot of times what I've seen is leaders struggle with delivering criticism because they fear that they're going to either demotivate a team member or they fear that it's going to create conflict within a team. And I'm sure that we've all seen that. There's been times where I've been providing feedback to somebody, they took it negatively, and then they went out and they told everybody that they worked with, oh, Jill, me, right? And so it creates this friction, and leaders are afraid of that. And so they tend to kind of be like, maybe I won't say this. And receiving feedback, that requires humility and resilience, which not everybody in leadership actually possesses. A lot of times there's a struggle when I've been working with a client, and she was talking about her manager and how she's tried to talk to her manager about some situations and some improvements that she'd like to see in her workplace, and how the manager has come back and said, well, this is the way that I choose to do it. If this doesn't work out for you, that style doesn't work for you, then you shouldn't be here anymore. I recently heard of a newer leader that their response to receiving, again, what was meant to be constructive feedback was taken as criticism, and they'd fire the staff. And so that's created this atmosphere, and it's created within the culture, like, we're not going to give feedback. We're not going to give suggestions. We're not going to be having these conversations. Misinterpretation, which again, we're of the age where we all grew up hearing the fact that 80% of communication is nonverbal communication. And if you are sending any sort of communication in an email and a text in that written form, it's very easy to lose tone. It's very easy to have that communication be misperceived. Somebody might read it with a different mindset and a different filter, and that impacts how the words are received. And then that causes people to get defensive. They could, call up their boss and be like, who do you think you are? Or vice versa, calling up a team member, and yet we're missing intentions. We're missing what people have intended because we're missing that tone. Even in face-to-face communication, my husband and I recently, he says something, and like, he says it pretty frequently. And it's just like okay. And I'm like, okay, there's the tone. And he's not even aware of it, and not even aware of what the tone is coming across as. And so we actually talked about it, and he was like, oh, I didn't even know. And so that draws into us as leaders and our emotional intelligence and our self-awareness of how we're coming across to people. But it's important that we are aware of all those things so that there's not those misinterpretations. So let's talk about some strategies for effective feedback. First of all, we talked about establishing trust. There needs to be an environment of safety where team members feel comfortable sharing feedback openly without fear of retribution. Nobody should be afraid of coming to a leader and saying, I noticed this, I've noticed you do this, or talking about a situation that's happening, giving a suggestion on maybe how the organization could be done differently, how something could be better organized. There should never be a fear for a team member. I'm going to mute you. There we go. Okay. Everybody should feel comfortable sharing feedback openly without fear of retribution. Trust forms that foundation for constructive feedback, which leads to continued exchange. Also, you mentioned this a little bit about emphasizing specificity and constructiveness. Feedback, we talk about SMART goals. Well, the same thing can be said about feedback. It should be specific, it should be actionable, and like I think Kathy said, it should be focused on behavior rather than personal attributes. When you start attacking a person personally and make it more about them, then you've totally lost the point of the conversation, and it no longer becomes feedback, and it definitely is not constructive criticism. I'm sure you've heard of the sandwich method, of sandwiching feedback that might be perceived as negative, sandwiching it between a couple of positive things. We want to highlight strengths alongside our areas of improvement because it does offer a balanced perspective. There's people that need to, especially with certain personalities, they need to hear that you do think positively of them, and that that you're not coming at them, again, it's not personal, and that you don't think so bad of them, that this isn't this all encompassing, right? Have you ever you heard the saying, making a mountain out of a molehill? You know, there's some people who you give them one thing and they're like, oh my gosh, they just think I'm the worst employee. I might as well quit now. They're not going to give me a good referral, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's keep it in perspective and make sure that we're talking about just the little things and not letting it get blown out of proportion. Of course, for this to be successful, it's important that in your organization that there's a growth mindset. I know that I've met with Dean, excuse me a second. Sorry. I met with Dean, and I know that in Dean's organization, it's run, and there's very much a growth mindset. That a growth mindset views feedback as an opportunity to get to the next level. It's an opportunity to make things better. It is an opportunity for people to look at what they're hearing and embrace it, and then almost be kind of like challenged by it, but not challenged in a bad way, challenged in like, okay, so this is going on. How can I make this better? How can I adapt my behavior? And then, of course, leading by example. If we expect our team to accept our feedback as positive, we 100% have to show that in return. I was watching it was a workshop that a good connection of mine on LinkedIn put on, and it was about leadership. And he was talking about, what is leadership? And there was a lot of focus on leadership being the person in charge, and attributes of a leader. But one of the things that was missing that we need to remember as leaders is our people are watching and they model our behavior. I remember a couple of years ago, I got sick. I don't like getting sick, and I definitely don't like it impacting my job. That's why they made Dayquil, is no stupid cold should keep me from going to my job. And I went into work and my boss came in and she goes, man, you look like crap. It's like, well, that's good because I feel like it. And she's like, why are you here? And I said, because there's work to be done. I need to get my job done. I don't want to fall behind. It's important, blah, blah, blah. And she looked at me and she goes, so what if, and she named one of my team members, she said, what if they were sick? And I said, oh, if they felt like me, I'd absolutely send them home. And she's like, well, goodbye. See ya. I was like, ugh. And it really did drive home a point that frankly I struggle with, in that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And if I'm behaving in a certain way, it doesn't matter what words I say. It doesn't matter how often I tell my team to do something a certain way, or, oh yeah, this is okay, this is acceptable. If you don't feel good, don't come into work or whatever. Because if they're seeing my behavior in a certain way, they're going to toss out the door anything that I've already said, right? Anything else? What other suggestions would you make when it comes to feedback and having an effective feedback exchange?
Does it help to, talk to the person you're giving the feedback to, and you mutually come up with a plan, an action plan, and then set it's like, let's try it this way, and then we'll follow up in a couple of weeks and see how it's going, but in the meantime, please contact me if you have any questions or concerns or even suggestions about how we can do things better. So I think putting it in their hands too, I don't know.
Yeah.
What does anybody else think about that?
Well, I think having the plan is always a good idea because you work together on a solution, what would make it better, and then initiate it, do it, and then talk about it again, in a month or so, and see how it went, or what other changes could be happening. But by doing it together and paying attention to it, it's about improving the job that you're doing, or whatever. And so hopefully that wouldn't be taken the wrong way.
Yeah. And it shows commitment. It shows that you're
Mhm.
committed to the person, that it truly isn't personal. It really is about the work that's being done, and that you're committed to their success.
Well, I think
Well, a
that's
lot
another
of,
point. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dean.
oh, no, that's okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to add to that, the way that how I was running my company is, it's all about improving the employees. It's not the way that they work. So you get training, you get this, so that you are the best person that you can be within this realm. And so it's about helping them too, being better, being more marketable, or whatever.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dean.
What were you going to say,
Oh,
Dean?
I was just going to say that, most of the time feedback is given in a one-on-one scenario, like when you have one-on-ones, or when there's like quarterly reviews, or however often you review your employees. And so, I always ask at a review or any one-on-one for feedback. I ask for it, and I try to pull it out of the person, so that if there is something that I can learn from the next time I ask them for feedback, I can also say, last time you said this, how did we improve? Did we listened to you. Did you notice a difference? Is there anything else we can improve? So always ask for it back, always. It's
Yeah,
a two-way street.
Mhm.
that's good. Yeah. There's a book out, it's been out for a while, and it's called Crucial Conversations. And when you're coming into a time where you think that the conversation might be tense, it's going to be difficult, leading with, hey, I want to talk to you about this topic. I don't want you to hear, and then that's where you put in what you're anticipating them to hear. I don't want you to hear that I think that you're a bad employee. What I want you to hear is that there've been some situations where there's areas for you to improve, and then I want us to come up with an action plan on how to do that. And then after you've kind of it's like setting the table. After you've set the table, then you actually have the conversation. But it puts them, for one, it helps them know why you're meeting, what the topic of conversation is going to be. And the fact that you have been able to speak to what you don't want them to hear lets them know you know them well enough to be able to say, okay, she knows me, and she knows what I'm probably going to be having spinning in my head. She's telling me not to do that, so I'm going to give that a try. Leadership isn't just about giving feedback. It is also about gracefully receiving it. When someone criticizes a leader, how they respond can profoundly impact team dynamics and the organizational culture. So here's how a leader can effectively handle criticism. Before we talk about that, have you ever had a time where somebody came to you and it was a positive experience where they gave you what could be construed as criticism?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't even remember what it was, but I do remember it was a criticism to me about how I was training them. So, maybe my expectations were too high, or, whatever it was. They explained how it felt, and and what they thought about that whole thing. And I appreciated it. I said, thank you. I mean, I didn't mean it that way, but
Sure.
it was good to know. So it just made me change the way that I talk to employees.
Okay. Good. Anybody else? To be completely transparent, I am not always great at receiving that constructive criticism. I work hard to not take it personally, but sometimes I do. Doggone it. Sorry. Let me take a drink real quick. Talk amongst yourselves. All right. It's easy. Some of it depends on the relationship that you have with the person. If this is a person who has not been supportive of the work that you're doing in the past already, you're already kind of on a heightened sense like, okay, what are they going to do? One time when we were pastoring, we had a lady walk in the church, literally her first Sunday. She'd never been to the church before. We didn't know her from Joe Blow on the street. And she walks in and she goes, well, I'm here to fix all the things that are wrong with your church. I went, oh, fantastic. So excited. She didn't stay very long because what she found was that we didn't operate that way. But one of the things that was, I could have gotten really upset and gotten really defensive and kind of been like, I don't know who you think you are, but I'm the pastor here. We've been doing great without your criticism, and we don't need that kind of spirit in this place, and blah, blah, blah. But I didn't. I did give her some space. But there was a time where somebody came in and offered some criticism, and I took it very personally and did not respond well. We're human. Sometimes we get caught on a bad day. Like we've talked about in previous meetings, we're all people. And so just like our employees have things going on in their personal lives that maybe we don't know about that's impacting how they're feeling for the day, we have the same thing. And so sometimes if you get caught on an off day, it's possible to not respond in the best way. When that happens, of course, the proper thing to do is to go back and say, I'm sorry, and kind of explain why you responded the way that you did and ask for another opportunity to have that conversation. But in the meantime, here's how leaders can effectively handle criticism. Maintain your composure. In the face of criticism, it is crucial for leaders to remain composed and avoid reacting impulsively. Take a minute to sit with it, and maybe you have to tell the person like, okay, I hear you and I hear what you're saying. I need a minute to sit with what you're saying before I can respond positively, not positively, but before I can respond in a way that's not going to make this more horrible. Maybe you need to go out and take a minute, take a walk around the block to just kind of clear your head and kind of filter through the words that had come through. But make sure that you are demonstrating emotional intelligence and ensure that you have a thoughtful response. The next thing to do is to listen actively. Leaders should actively listen to the criticism without interrupting or becoming defensive. Paying attention to the speaker's perspective, it demonstrates respect, and it actually opens the door for constructive dialogue. And there's times where somebody has come in and they have things that they need to say, and it's very much driven by emotion. They're having an emotional response to a situation that happened, and they think it's your fault and that you're to blame, and they're coming in. If you actively listen and are being attentive to the words that they're saying and validate what they're feeling, and again, validating what they're feeling doesn't mean that they're right. It just means that they're being heard. When they know that helps diffuse. It helps diffuse the emotion, and it helps diffuse the situation. They start kind of calming down. A lot of times people simply need to know that they have a place where they can just kind of let some steam off, and that they're going to be heard, and that then there's going to be some sort of a conversation afterwards about the experience, and then where do they go from there? Seek understanding. Rather than dismissing criticism outright, which I used to see that a lot in the 80s. People would just be like, oh yeah, whatever, you know, that's just who they are. They just criticize everything. Understand, what is the underlying reason? Why are they saying the things that they're saying? What's going on? Is it something because it's going on in their world? Are there other people who are having the same issue? What is going on at the deeper level? Asking questions to find out more about what's going on. And when you do that, when you ask these clarifying questions, when you empathize with their viewpoint, again, it fosters mutual understanding. It fosters trust. And when you have those things in place, you get to have intelligent conversation. Reflect and evaluate. After receiving criticism, you should reflect on its validity and consider how it aligns with your values and your goals. Sometimes when somebody's criticizing, it's because they have expectations that you haven't met, because it's outside of your goals, it's outside of who you are. Being able to have that conversation and explain that to them is very good, but making sure that you're spending some time with the words that have been said to say, okay, is this true? How does this align with who I am? Like if somebody came to me and said, oh, you know what, I think that you're a person that doesn't have any integrity, that'd be really problematic, because that's one of my core values. If somebody came to me and said, you know what, I think that you're not doing a great job here as a leader because you don't bring a clown in every Friday to entertain us. Yes, I would evaluate that and be like, well, that's not really a value of how I run and how I want to lead. But honest self-assessment allows you to identify areas of growth and course correction. Remember, we are working in an environment where we have a growth mindset. We take every opportunity, the good and the bad, and say, how can we grow from this? And then express gratitude. Regardless of whether you agree with the criticism, leaders should express gratitude for the feedback. Acknowledge the fact that again, if you're a leader and somebody that you're leading comes to you, that took courage on their part. And so acknowledge the fact that it took them that courage to come in and have that conversation with you, that you appreciate the communication. Again, you're not necessarily saying that you agree with it. You're not saying that you appreciate being criticized, but you are appreciating the courage that they came and the fact that they value communication and they value the organization enough to be able to come in and have this tough conversation.
I think, Jill, also that by asking the right questions or probing questions, if someone comes in and says, like you said, I don't think you're a good leader, and you're like, oh wow, I'm really sorry to hear that. Why do you think that? Well, you don't have integrity. Well, that's sad to hear. That's one of my core values. Why do you think that? Can you give me an example that you've seen me, do that would give you that impression? Can you tell me when it happened? And sometimes you can learn something about yourself, but sometimes what you've done is you've shown the person that you are interested in what they've actually brought up. But also the person who brought it up could have had a bad day. And the deeper you probe, they start to realize, well, I guess it was just that one time and I was late and I was in a bad mood. And so all of a sudden the person understands that, well, you do have integrity, but it was a bad day that made them, have that appearance. So
Yeah.
good probing, good questions, show that interest, and you can probably get down to the root cause of why they're giving a negative feedback.
Yeah, that's good. And if somebody's coming in and giving positive feedback, if it's not criticism, again, we want to model for them how how to respond. We want to stay humble. We want to appreciate it. But as feedback becomes ingrained in the fabric of who you are as a leader, your organization is going to thrive amidst challenges and opportunities, propelled by the collective pursuit of excellence. That's really what should be at the core of those conversations, is that we're always trying to be our best our best as an organization, our best as individuals. I wanted to give you, Dean, you had mentioned about asking those questions and asking questions back in performance reviews and kind of soliciting feedback. Some questions that I like to ask when I'm doing that is, and you can do this after an event, you can do this with new people that are coming on or people who've been with your organization for a while. There's 4 questions. What's right about what we're doing? What's wrong about what we're doing? What's missing in our organization? To be our best, what's missing? And then what's confusing about the work that we're doing? What's right, what's wrong, what's missing and confusing? Well, thank you everybody for joining. Again, I'm super excited. Next week, Angela Gray is going to be joining us. We're going to talk about some obstacles that she has overcome in leadership. And you will very much be inspired and encouraged by our conversation. It will be live, of course, and then we'll record it and it'll get out there on YouTube and be out there in all the places. But in the meantime, have a great week. If there's anything that I can ever do to be of assistance to you, feel free to email or to send a message. You can find me on LinkedIn or you can email me, and have a great rest of your day. See you later.
Thanks, Jill.
Bye.
Thanks, Jill. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.